Ready? Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. So welcome to the Chico Unified School District Board of Education, our regular meeting. Today is January 16th, 2019. We have nothing to report out of closed session, and I would ask that you please join me in a flag salute. Great, I was a little out of order there. Flag salute first, and report from closed session. So next we'll go to student reports, and I'll turn that over to Superintendent Staley.
Thank you, President Hovey. For those of you here tonight, you're in for quite a treat. It is my pleasure to introduce Tanner John. And Tanner, if you can just give us a brief introduction of the students that we'll be listening to tonight and what you're performing, I'd really appreciate it. We'd actually like you to wait just a moment, and if you can join Mr. McKay at the podium.
1 second. So I think anybody associated with education knows that one of the hallmarks of a great teacher is the ability to inspire the love of learning for that specific content area. And I can't think of a better example of that than Tanner Johns. He was an instrumental part. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. He was a key part in bringing back the music program to the junior high school. We were coming out of the dark ages there for a while. And when you're building a program from scratch, it's all heart and soul and knowledge. And what Tanner's been able to do at Bidwell and also at Marsh, he goes between the two sites. Jessica wanted to be here tonight, but she had to take care of some family business. Is amazing. When you factor in that he has to go between the two sites, that's even more incredible that he's able to build the relationships with the kids and with the staff to get the support that he needs for the program. He gets kids that have never played an instrument before and gets them going, and they love it, and that can be a really frustrating endeavor. He gets them to love it, take those risks, and when you see the looks on their faces from the beginning of the year to the end of the year concert, it's just amazing. As a former band person myself, I know that the kids will never forget that. They'll always remember Mr. Johns. They'll always remember that time they played that solo. They'll always remember that CMEA performance. And so for that reason and many more, it's my honor to recommend Mr. Johns for the Superintendent's Award for this month.
What do you guys think? Is he awesome or what?
I don't think they heard you.
Well, that was a surprise. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well deserved. Thank you.
We'll put 15 up and let you guys continue.
Do you want to go ahead?
So speaking of Bidwell and awesomeness, I'd like to bring up somebody who knows why she's here. So I couldn't bring myself to fool Sandra Martin. Plus, I wouldn't have been able to do it anyway. Sandra Martin, come on down. Everybody knows that the registrar is like one of the backbones of the school. And when it comes to the master schedule and making sure that kids get into the right classes and they have, that section, and we can still do that and make the teacher go across town, all that magic hocus pocus, it's all about the registrar working that calculus. We are lucky at Bidwell to have Sandra Midnight Martin running the show because she does whatever it takes to make the master schedule work. I don't know how she does it every time, but Bidwell's always like, hey, you're right on staffing wise. And Jim's like, thanks a lot. I'm like, hey, it's all Sandra. I literally had nothing to do with it. Like, other than I try to run interference for her and buy her cookies and stuff like that. But she works all that magic. If a teacher has a request for a prep period on a certain period, or we're trying to do a new intervention class, but we don't want it to interfere with something else, somehow she always, literally always makes it happen. No pressure. You can mess up a couple times, you're good. No, but she always makes it happen somehow. And as important as all that is the way she does it with such a grace and a joy that when I bring somebody into Bidwell to meet, that they're thinking about going there, I can't wait for them to meet Sandra, because that's who you want them to meet. Or I know when a kid or a family is going to come in and they really need to.
Because of the winter break, we have not met in negotiations, but tomorrow we meet with CTA, so we're looking forward to that. And CSEA just recently had elections, so we're hoping that we will be resuming negotiations with them this next month.
Mr. Moretti? Nothing? All right, very good. So now we will move on to item 9. It's our consent calendar. Does anyone have any items to pull from the consent calendar? Dr. Kaiser?
I'd like to pull 925, 926, and 928.
925, 926, and 928. Very good.
I'd like to
Ms. Griffin?
pull 9.1.2.
Got it. Lando? No? Ms. Robinson? All righty.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to approve the remainder of the consent calendar.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Griffin, aye.
Hovey, aye.
Kaiser, aye.
Very good, motion passes unanimously. All righty, we will go to 9.1.2, and I believe Ms. Griffin, you pulled that, and I did as well, so go ahead.
Yeah, I pulled that because I noticed, and I meant to ask about this earlier, but I see that we have a donation here. Actually, there's two donations. They're each for $71,000.
Yes.
One to Chico High and one to Pleasant Valley High from a Joan C. Robertson Trust.
Yes.
And I wondered if the superintendent had any more information on that.
So yes, this was an individual who was a musician and obviously had a great love of music. And when she passed away, wanted to ensure that money was given to both Pleasant Valley High School and Chico High School for their music programs, in particular the band programs. So, it was very fitting that we had a band program here tonight. And I know both high schools are very excited about this, and if you guys didn't pull it, we were going to. Just huge thank you and appreciation to the family for their support of our schools and music in particular.
Well, given the details and the person's background, this seems like a really fitting naming. I don't know if we have a name on the band rooms or whatever, but seems like we might look into some kind of salutation or recognition. This is quite wonderful.
And we can certainly do a plaque thanking them within, both band rooms, just as an appreciation.
With that being said, I move approval of item number 9.1.2.
Okay, may I have a vote, please? Yeah, all those in favor? How's that? Aye. There we go. Passes unanimously. All right, the next item was 9.2.5. Dr. Kaiser?
So this seems incredibly fitting since I'm following in the stream of musical notes, I guess. But I wanted to recognize in particular the fact that both of our choirs and the honor band as well at PV have been invited to perform at Sonoma State University. And again, as was kind of noted earlier, at one point we were so desperate that we considered cutting music. And this is a rebirth that is intensely satisfying. And I think it's driven by the faculty at these two high schools that have made it just an absolute devotion to not only bring it back, but to make it excel. So I just think this was wonderful and it deserved recognition. I also wanted to recognize in 9.2.8 a similar outstanding context. I have been to Japan and representing actually, I was representing educators, but in a different context. And I thought to have this 3-week exposure of these students to Japanese culture is really phenomenal, especially since they have to report on social media. They have to report back to the Japanese, but they have to report to us too. So I am intensely looking forward to seeing those students give us a report that we can hear about their experiences. What a wonderful exposure. So with that, I'd like to move to pass. Oh, you have a comment too?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Kathy and President Hovey. When the school board members from Japan came to visit 3 years ago, I was one of the board members that was able to meet with them for a bit and to discuss with the board members from the Japan and from the Tokyo area. It was very interesting at how differently, they appoint and interact with their business community as board members and educators as board members. It isn't at all the same structure that we have. And they were quite interested in how we set up our governance status in our district, and they were really looking forward to having this partnership put in place, which I believe we started 2 years ago. And I'm really happy to see a group going for a significant period of time.
Any
Now
other
you can
comments? Comments from the audience? Yes, come on up.
To me is what is exciting. This year, we included Chico High.
Yeah.
And so we had Japanese students do a visit at Chico High. They spent a few days there. They did some programs with them. They shadowed some of our students. So what the exciting part of this, and I want to thank Michelle Martin too, to include them. We have 7 of our Chico High students that'll be going this year for the first time too. Then we hope to expand that program at Chico High. Some more of those kids, because previously it was just PV students going with Miss Martin with the Japanese class, but this time 7 are getting to go with them too. So we're hoping to hear that when they get back from both schools. So it's kind of a great thing that they're doing this together. Okay.
Hopefully we'll have a dual report.
We
right?
will.
All right.
Okay, we'll take it.
So with that, I move the approval of 9.2.5, 9.926, and 928.
I'll second that motion.
All righty, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All righty, motion is approved. All righty, so we will now move on to the discussion and action calendar. And our first item is 10.1.1, campfire update.
Yes, and we're delighted to be here tonight to update you regarding the campfire and Paradise students. And I do want to take this opportunity to tell you that it's gone very smoothly. And the reason it's gone very smoothly, integrating these students into our school district, is because of our staff. That's including all the classified staff and our teachers, administrators. And really, I feel a little emotional because look at what we saw tonight, these magnificent opportunities that kids have in our district. And every day we hear about things that our district staff are doing for these students. And I'm just going to tell you because the band was here. An Emma Wilson student that was in the band lost his trumpet in the campfire. So you would think, okay, it's a district piece of equipment. We'll have to figure out something to do about it. I didn't even know about it. The music teacher and the classroom teacher, Margaret Tebow at Emma Wilson, realized he lost this, did a GoFundMe project, $500 Bundy trumpet is in his hands. Nora, the music teacher, Hunter, brought it down to the district office and said, can we get this barcoded? So there's a 5th grade teacher supporting what we're going to see eventually here. It's everywhere in our district. Everybody is supporting all these fantastic initiatives, and now we have all these new kids that they just, surrounded with this support. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to, well, not introduce you, I'm going to call Diane first, because she talked with all the elementary counselors yesterday and has some insights on things that we're doing to support those kids.
Okay, so I'm going to go over pretty much the counseling and where we are in providing supports to students and families. Every site has a different impact and a different need based on the number of students that came from Paradise, the number of students at the site were impacted, the number of adults, staff members that were impacted. And so we've differentiated resources to each site based on what those needs are. And I'm in communication with them often to revalidate what they need for counseling. But the staff that we already have has created groups at the sites that need it for that storytelling that's needed, for a girls group and a boys group of those impacted the fires. So that's at some of the sites where there's larger numbers of students so that they can talk through the emotions and have the shared experience. There's increased support and interventions for all affected students. So we have eyes on, and we know who every single student is at every site. So those counselors are checking in with them frequently, even if it's just, hi, how's it going today? Because you don't want to make it so much that they are thinking, okay, supposed to be wrong. We want to keep it normalized. So they're all doing that, the staff that we already have. They have been doing trainings at every site for how teachers should respond. Then outside of our district, Butte County received a grant and some funding, and so they are providing additional counseling support at every site that has indicated they need it. And so they are paying, in one case at Sierra View, we only have a part-time counselor there, but that's all she was working. So they were able to pay the other portion of her salary so she could be there full-time, because that's one of the sites that needs ongoing supports. And so that Butte County's funding that. We have about 5 sites that qualify. And
a 30-second elementary update. We added in it, I'm going to cringe saying the number because it's flexing all the time, because we have kids coming and going, 120, 130-ish in the elementary range. We've been really lucky. Where they wanted to go to school, they fit in like kind of big Tetris. I mean, so if you kind of think of like, we had open spaces here and here and here, that's where some second and third graders all were able to fit in. So the state gave us a little flexibility with our 24-to-1 for a while. I think we've gone over it for a couple days at a couple sites with literally like a 25th kid in a couple places, some of those things. So really nicely fit in. Kids are thrilled to be here. We're hearing really positive feedback from the families also. Diane was talking about the social emotional supports. We actually kind of see the parents are a little bit more impacted with it than the kids are right now, is kind of what we're hearing from staff at the sites like that. The kids have kind of got in or just kind of going with the program and just kind of adapting. The moms and dads, I think, are the ones that are getting really hit by the tragedy and at a much larger level. The kids are just happy to be back in school and kind of going on with it. The other thing that's coming up, interesting, we were just over the Torres shelter visiting because we have had families historically over there for long-term kind of situations with them. Torres shelter is kind of changing their role based on what's happening with the campfire. They're going to start receiving a bunch of folks from the fairgrounds in the very near future. So we are going to start working on a relationship with the Esplanade House and start kind of upping things with that. We've had it with the Torres shelter with kind of supporting families and transportation and supports. We're kind of shifting now. We just had a conversation a couple days ago with the Esplanade House, like I said, to start kind of shifting that focus that way. So elementary looks good. We're happy with things. We're hearing good feedback from the parents also with it.
Mr. Sullivan, for you and for Ms. Olson, you mentioned about the parents of the
Yeah.
students. Are there any supports out there that you know of for the parents? Yeah.
So today, we had a meeting with BCOE. Kelly was in, everybody was in the meeting. Diane was unfortunately in a special ed meeting.
Oh, is it?
Yes. And we talked to them about, they have some extra supports that we need, something for parent supports. We didn't actually come up with an idea, but they're open and talking and thinking about it too.
On parents, this is a conversation I've been having from the day the fire had it with BCOE.
I know you have.
And I told them right from the beginning, our biggest concern is not the students, because their worries in their world, they have this many worries. Parents have this many worries, and they're the ones that are going to struggle. When we lose the parents, that's when we lose the kids.
Exactly.
So they have hired Scott Lindstrom and Roy Applegate to coordinate finding services and how to put programs in to support adults. It's, and again, an evolving process. And then Tina has one thing also.
Great, thank you.
Right, hello. As you know, Chico Unified has been looking into bringing mindfulness into coursework in classrooms with teachers, with instructors, for students. It's been pretty successful as it's been built up. There's a lot of data to support that it's extremely good to reduce anxiety, to keep strengthening our brain. Over 175 teachers have been trained in mindful schools. We recently, just not too long ago, Diane received a call from a program called Inner Explorer. And it is a woman who started that program, who left Mindful Schools, was one of the founders, started Inner Explorer, which is a web-based mindfulness program. And in conjunction with LG Electronics, they offered us site licenses for all of our Chico Unified Schools through June of 2020. So we've been looking into it. Diane and I have been looking into it together, and there is a parent component with it, which is there are several pluses to the program, but one of which we're talking about right now is a parent component. So it's all in working right now, how it's all going to come together, but it's very exciting. Schools, the elementary schools are really excited for it. The junior highs are interested, and we'll be working into the high schools too to see how that can work for them. It is voluntary, of course, for teachers to use it, but it is a win and can help in a lot of ways.
Thank you so much.
Thank Tina, because I've been asked to make sure that I handle my job. So it's one of the first things I've handed off to someone, and she's done an amazing job. So it really has been Tina.
Excellent.
And one last thing, Paradise Unified has also been involved in that in the offer, and we've hooked them up to talk together. So that's good for their district as well.
Okay, at the secondary level, since the last time we did the report, it's been pretty much a 50-50 split. The kids that we've lost, we've gained a few more, so our numbers really haven't changed drastically. When it comes to counseling, we talked about PV has asked for a few more extra supports when it comes to counseling, so we're able to provide that through that. Another kind of, I think it's kind of semi-exciting to me, I had a K-8 charter that normally was up in Paradise, but it's now down here. They asked if they could be part of their 8th graders going to our visitations to our high schools on February 21st. So they will be joining us on their day so they can see what our high schools can provide for their students coming out. Obviously, that's a K-8. They don't have a high school section, so we don't want to do that to the other schools that have a K-12 if they, but which was exciting. They reached out to us. We want our students to be able to look at your high schools on those days. So that's an exciting thing that we've been able to do too.
So we received a call from Pat Furr from Computers for Classrooms, and she said that they received a grant that will let them distribute high-end laptops to the families that lost their homes. So right now they have an initial number of 700 laptops to distribute. They're going to come complete with a full 1-year warranty. They'll be reinstalled with Windows and have Office and everything on them. This is a great thing for our families because a lot of these parents don't have computers right now. So we have, Chris Winkle did a report, and we have about 610 families who've lost their homes. So our targeted case managers are calling those families and seeing who would be interested in a laptop. So we've had about 50 families say yes so far.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. It's amazing.
Okay, last time when we spoke with you about enrollment, 364 students that enrolled, 59 then left the district again. A number of students have, enrolled with us, left, and then come back. So we're still somewhat in flux, but the overall numbers are staying relatively steady. We're actually a little bit down from where we were before the break. Of the students that were Chico Unified students prior to the fire, we have 390 indicated at this time that were affected by the campfire. That's not to say they lost houses or anything like that, but they were displaced by the campfire. There has been a number of those students who have left Chico Unified, but to be honest, I don't trust the way we keep records. We don't necessarily know if they left us because of the fire or not, but we have had a number of those kids leave the district as well. So in a nutshell, Paradise, kids that have lived in Paradise or were affected by the fire have kind of come in and out, and we're still seeing some fluctuation, but it's leveled off.
I do not. Ms. Robinson?
Yes, thank you. When I was looking for help for adults that had lost homes, I was directed to the website Butte Recovers. Oh, Diane, you're the one that gave me, and I did follow up, and there are a couple of sites on that website that were strictly for adults that have been through trauma, and they were excellent. So continue to refer people to that website. Thank you.
And I believe we have a link on our website.
Yeah, no, I found the links to be very helpful.
Well, I was going to wait, but maybe then I decided no. So we were supposed to give an update on CBSA or whatever. And one of the things that I noted was there was a section on ACE, which is the adult child traumas. And we were already #1 in the state, so I can't imagine how much higher we are than everybody else, which is not anything we want to win after the campfire. And they were stressing trauma-informed training, as you guys have noted, and suicide prevention. I understand one of my friends who was a former student is a major therapist in town, and she was trying to work to bring in the Green Team. It's an international team that does helps with trauma and after therapy, but said she was having trouble getting them recognized, and I guess they're internationally known all over. So I don't know what's with that, but I didn't know if we perceived that our ACEs score was going to go off the chart, you know, were we going to be?
So I've had one call from a therapist within the city that offered supports. I referred them right to Butte County because we're letting them spearhead that piece of it. I don't know what happened from there. I know I referred to the appropriate places. ACEs, you have to be a little bit careful when you talk about ACEs. I was part of the ACEs collaborative group. Dave McKay, I don't know if he's still here, he was part of that group. Scott Lindstrom is part of it, and it's all the agencies. That report of ACEs is over 10 years old now.
Right.
And so you have to be cautious when you're interpreting because they don't have good update to where we were prior to the fire. You also have to be careful with the fire because crisis events can or could not be trauma. So you have to be careful of how you're interpreting those things. So I'm always a little cautious of saying, yes, we have really impacted trauma. We may or may not, but we do have a crisis that we have to respond for. The trauma we won't know until several months down the line when we see that it's long-lasting, that they didn't have the assets and the resources to climb above it. So I'd just be cautious on that. But yeah, you can go ahead and have them keep calling me, but I will refer them to Scott Lindstrom and Roy Applegate because they are overseeing that.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Mr. Hanlon? Oh, excuse me.
Just a quick one. I wanted to shout out to CUTA. Shortly after the fire, Kevin Reddy reached out and asked us about waiving class limits, and we quickly entered into agreement. And without that waiver and that flexibility, we would not have been able to warmly accept the students in as quickly and efficiently as they were coming into us. So I just wanted to publicly thank CUTA for quickly entering into that agreement. That gave us huge flexibility. It gave us about a month to kind of figure out how many kids we're going to get, where to put them, and then even out class sizes. So thanks, Kevin.
Exactly.
Are you being nice to Kevin?
I am, but it's well deserved.
Mr. Lando, I'm sorry.
The session at the training about the adverse childhood events, one of the things they stressed to us was that, like you said, these things take time to develop before you see them, but it would be nice to know that we have, or have at least considered some kind of a plan to roll trauma-informed classroom trainings into, or at least make it an option for professional development.
Done that.
Excellent, okay. Thank you for being the new kid.
Yeah, we just did one on Wednesday.
Excellent.
Junior high teacher did well. Matt Redham did it. One of the breakout sessions. Then obviously the mind. Also, just both those are trying to hit all the different ones and let pick which ones they feel they need. I heard.
And I think that, to your point, it's not a one-time event. You've got to keep this ongoing and keep our staff aware, and we've done the training for classified and certificated because it takes all of them. But it's not a one-shot deal for sure.
I'm sure you guys are on it. You're fabulous. Again, I'm the new kid. I'm not sure where we stand on all this stuff, so thank you very much.
No, a very good reminder.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Questions, comments from the audience? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. There's no action needed. That was information only. So we're going to move to item 10.1.2. And due to a prior financial relationship that I have had with Blue Oak Charter School, I will be recusing myself from this discussion in order to avoid any perception of a conflict of interest. So I will be turning the meeting over to our Vice President, Elizabeth Griffin.
Okay. Hello, Tina.
Hello, so I'm first up here.
Okay, so we are talking now about a resolution which comes before us, which is with regards to a non-contiguous offer of facilities to the Blue Oak Charter School.
Correct. Yes, every year, according to Prop 39, charter schools can ask for space available. We do not, we haven't received a Prop 39 request from Blue Oak in quite some time, to my knowledge. We did this year. They have they've been asking for space for over 300 students. At this time in Chico Unified, we do not have one site that can accommodate all of those students. So therefore, we have to bring this resolution to the board for approval to look at what we call non-contiguous sites or multi-site offer. The offer goes to them before February 1st, but tonight, like I said, in order to get to that offer, we have to have approval to offer a multi-site offer to them.
Just to add to that, our rationale for doing that, as Tina mentioned, is we don't have a single site that can accommodate all of their students. So we do have the right to have requests that our charters have their schools look like our schools if they want to utilize our housing. So since our schools are in a K-5, TK-5 configuration, and then a 6, 7, 8 configuration, that's how we would propose housing for any charters that we cannot accommodate in their existing configuration. So this would be, the board approval would be for us to offer housing on a K-5 and a 6, 7, 8 basis.
Yes, Kathy?
So Eileen and I were the members of the facility committee. This was looked at very closely. In fact, we actually had to go back and change the junior high we thought we would use because we had to make sure we had the right classroom settings. I will note, though, that I think besides the issue of comparable housing, today's report out by the city of the traffic impacts and the accidents, I think we were very cognitive of the stress of having a situation where the kids could have expanded parking and safe drop-off and pickup zones. That's always a concern. So in this offer, we did consider all the possibilities, and it was our unanimous view that this was the very best we could do for these kids. So thank you.
So let's, I don't even know if we've mentioned thus far what the proposed distribution is going to be. Which schools are involved in this offer?
Well, remembering that tonight, that the resolution is what's before us first to get through. We have to have that resolution passed to offer the 2 sites before we get to the offer, the first offer made in February. So this is embedded in there, and the 2 sites looked at because of space availability would be Chico Junior for these 6, 7, and 8th grade students, and portables on the Chapman campus that would be placed there, not existing portables, but portables placed on the Chapman campus.
Okay, so do I understand you as saying that we are not deciding on specific schools at the moment? No, we are just deciding on the ability to split.
The first resolution is to have non-contiguous offer. So we have to pass that first, and then we can move to the second resolution. There are 2 separate resolutions, I think, correct?
Just one.
Oh,
actually,
just
right
one.
now.
Oh, okay.
It's
Sorry.
Just one. And this is a first for all of us. We've not had to have a non-contiguous offer as of yet in Chico. So because of the number of kids at Blue Oak to be housed, that's why this resolution is going forward for the 2 sites. Yes. So yes, Kathy is correct. This is one resolution tonight to pass.
Okay, and that is strictly that we allow a non-contiguous offer to move forward?
Correct.
Okay. Eileen?
In the resolution, it does actually state where we're going to put what our proposal is. I was just looking at it. Tina, help.
Item 10.
Yeah, I've got item 10. It's oh, there it is, 10.2, and it's number 5, where it explains that none of the existing district schools have the capacity to accommodate the entirety of Blue Oak schools. And in fact, accommodating Blue Oak elementary students would require the addition of approximately 10 modular buildings at the Chapman site. The number of schools over capacity and their location throughout the district prevents the district from redrawing attendance line, and it goes through all of that. And then it says that's the rationale for why we're doing the non-contiguous. And then
Right, non-contiguous is that back to that two-site. And as Kelly said, a junior high site and an elementary site.
And then
Right.
in 10D, it says Chico Junior High School is the closest junior high school to Chapman. And there are then rationales for why Chico Junior, because of the traffic issues surrounding, well, Bidwell didn't have the rooms, but the impact of McManus on that intersection and stuff, that's the rationale for why Chico Junior. The other thing that Kathy and I both had a big background in, because we were involved with the initial search for a spot for Inspire. And we had initially, targeted the Chapman site for the Inspire charter school. And so we're both familiar with it's a large campus. It's right adjacent to the 20th Street Park. We have, since we initially looked at it for Inspire, enlarged the parking lot and the traffic flow, and we've also included the study that would allow people to come in through the Dr. Martin Luther King backside of that too. So it's another way to safely transport and drop off students in that area. And the rest of the elementary sites just have nothing that would compare with the safety mitigations that we find at Chapman. So Chapman was definitely, well, it was the only option. It was the only safe option. And there are 5 portables, I think, that it was going to take to bring them to Chapman? 10? Oh,
for the
okay.
elementary. And again, the offer, according to Prop 39, goes out by February 1st. So that is a separate piece of this whole bit of information. But again, the approval for the non-contiguous offer will be made by you. Yeah, from the board.
Okay, right, it does definitely state specifics. So I just wanted to clarify that. Any other questions? Yes. Kevin?
So I understand the law, and you have to make the offer. And so at Chapman, there are no rooms, you'd have to bring some in.
Yes.
At Chico Junior, are there empty rooms, or?
Yeah.
There are enough that are non-core classroom or special ed rooms, yes, but barely.
So what does that mean?
It means that there are classes for their Spark, which is their after-school. One room is a storeroom for fine arts equipment currently. The 2 others were 2 computer labs. So those classrooms do not house students in core classes.
But they're used by the kids there, and so they would no longer be available.
Correct. According to
That's it.
Prop 39, they look at, classes that are open that are not daily courses in core curriculum or special education.
I didn't realize that they were going to be putting portables on there. Is this the first time we've done this, where we've put portables? I mean, I know we did that with Inspire, because at the time the portables were placed, Inspire was still an internal charter. But is this the first time we're doing this? We're proposing to do this? It is. And I didn't know that was a requirement, that we had to do that. I just thought that if there was, classroom space of the type that you described,
Right.
characterized that way, that we had to, but I didn't realize that. So do we actually have to buy portables?
Yes.
We actually have to buy portables.
If I, yeah, if,
So we do have 10 if this moves forward. We do. Yeah.
there is a cost involved, even though we have them, to refurbish and put, put all of the stuff in. Julie, could we have an estimate of what that installation cost will be if they accept the offer?
Yes, it's approximately $75,000 per portable,
Thank you.
so.
Wow. Okay.
So.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Any questions from the audience?
So
Yes,
I
Kathy?
move 10.1.2.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, it passes, and I guess we'll put this forward and we'll see what happens in the future. I guess you will come back
Right.
if they do
Right.
decide.
It is a process.
To
Prop
move
39
forward, and
is a
then we'll
process,
take it
yes.
step by step if it does move forward.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank.
Well, our next item is informational. It's California State Dashboard. And Mr. Karras? give it
Thank
to
you. Please excuse me a moment. I failed to pull up my slides prior to the meeting, so it'll take me about 30 seconds.
Alrighty.
I've never known you to be without a slide.
I only have 9. So. Okay, all set. Sorry about that. So I'm here to update you on our fall 2018 state dashboard results, which reflect data from the 17-18 and 16-17 school year. The dashboard was released publicly in early December 2018. The Chico Unified Leadership Team has been briefed on our results, and some certain parts of DLC have been also. Okay, the dashboard continues to be in a state of change. As you know, 2 years ago was the first time that the state dashboard was released. Since then, new indicators have been added, calculations have been changed, et cetera. That continues with the most recent dashboard. Biggest change in my mind is the new look. I think it's much more user-friendly. Aside from the superficial, though, some pretty big ones are what's now called our dashboard alternative school status schools, which is the former ASAM schools. So that would be like our continuation alternative ed schools. Those are now included on the dashboard. Also, the academic indicators now includes grade 11 results. So it's grades 3 through 8 and 11. We also face accountability measures on our academic scores based on participation rate. So if we're below 95%, we get dinged, okay? This year also, one was removed temporarily, one indicator. So the English learner progress indicator was removed temporarily until next year. Could do this. can't. I'm sorry. Yeah, absolutely. I'll get those to Erica. Okay, so the college and career indicator is kind of a collection of course sequence completion rates, smarter balance scores, AP and IB testing, CTE completers, et cetera, et cetera. So it kind of encompasses a lot of basically course completion and test scores into one score. That changed significantly this year in that it's using actual data from last year. In previous iterations of the dashboard, it was looking 2 years back. So we're getting up to date across the board this year with the new dashboard. We receive a performance level color. State seal of biliteracy was added as one of the qualifiers to indicate that you are ready for college or career. Military science was added, and the inclusion of students that take the CalAlt, the California Alternate Assessment, or the CAW. Graduation rate changed a little bit on due to calculations changes based on federal requirements, and we are now able to get the graduation rate from the year prior, where in years past we were always looking 2+ years in the past. So before I get into the dashboard, couple areas of success that we're very proud of are English language arts scores. We increased those, and we are green, so that was something that we are, again, work very hard towards and we're very proud of. And our college and career indicator was the highest level it could be, which is blue. Okay, yeah. And that's kind of, I see that as kind of the top level academic indicator. Areas to focus on, of course, educators being educators, we're like, okay, here's a celebration. Now what do we need to focus on? Couple subgroups that we need to focus on are homeless and foster youth. I'll talk a little bit more about those later. Our math scores have remained relatively stable, meaning not going too much up or down over the years. So that's kind of an area to focus on for improvement. We are yellow, right? And one area of success that I didn't mention is we did not decline in any of the indicators for the dashboard measurement. So we maintained or increased in all dashboard indicators. So the dashboard, as you know, is publicly available. The website is here, caschoolsdashboard.org. I'm going to go ahead and click in there. Following, kind of when I'm walking you through our results, I'll talk a little bit about state and federal accountability, and then go into kind of some more details about that when we're done taking the tour. On a side note, I'm showing the Chico Unified dashboard, but dashboards are available for every individual site as well. Correct. All right, this one I know I can blow up. Okay, so I'm going to kind of walk you through this. If you remember last 2 years dashboard, this looks significantly different. Gone are the little pies, kind of Trivial Pursuit pieces that were there in the past, and now it's just a simple dial. So just to kind of walk you through where we stand, and first let me give you a background on the colors. Blue is the highest that you can get, and then it goes all the way down to red. Okay, so for chronic absenteeism, we were yellow. Suspension rate, yellow, so middle of the road there. And I mentioned there's no English learner progress indicator this time around. Graduation rate, green. Okay, we have some interesting, some kind of success stories in our subgroup data that you'll see in a second as well with that. College and career, there's our blue. And there's our ELA, our green in ELA, and our yellow in mathematics. The other indicators that you see there with no colors are the local indicators that were presented to you at one of the November board meetings, where we do a self-assessment on the topics here.
Mr. Karras, is there a place that shows comparative to the prior year? Because that dashboard, it's cool looking, I like the dials, but it's not showing me where we were.
Right.
Did we go up or down?
Perfectly timed question, thank you. Okay, so moving down on the first dashboard page, let me blow this up even more here. We say English language arts and math. And we can see for English language arts, we increased 3 points on our average distance to MET. Okay, so that is our comparison to last year. Math, we missed our increased designation by average of a half a point. So, so we maintain there. College and career, we increased almost 10%. Mm-hmm. Correct. Yep, sorry about that. Yeah, if you increase that distance to MET 3 to 15 points, the state considers you increased. And really that's the number that we point our site administrators and then what we look at in Ed Services is to make sure we are moving forward and increasing regardless of where we started. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The college and career indicator, probably our biggest success over the last couple years, we increased 9.7% in the number of students that were designated as college or career ready. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I want to know who's responsible for all these kick-ass new classes we have that are CTE and UC and CSU. I knew you'd stand up. Stand up.
Obviously,
No,
I didn't do that.
they
Actually,
are so phenomenal.
Yeah, I got to tell you, the group that really does it is the Kristen Lauer group, Priscilla Burns. They and all the teachers that work with them. They do an excellent job, and they just constantly just report to us. And so I don't really want to take any credit for that, but just like some of the ones that you guys approved tonight, one of them is going to be a completer for us. Mm-hmm. And so again, they're completely working hard for that. On that, we're very proud of them.
If they had been here, I would have saluted them.
And as somebody coming in new to this CTE world, I came from an elementary world, so I'm learning a lot. And this is one of the exciting pieces to this new position of mine is to explore and learn about what happens in these CTE courses. I visited PV today. This morning, I asked Priscilla to walk me through. We're going to do Chico High next week, and I want to keep going back because, first of all, I love being in there with the kids and seeing what they're doing, but amazing things, amazing pieces of equipment they're using, everything from the kinds of desks in the engineering courses, how they configure up into drafting tables, these huge, beautiful screens, to Mike Peck's visual arts program. It blows my mind. It's really exciting for me to be part of it, quite selfishly, so it's neat to see.
Well, I just think being blue and having that almost a 10-point jump is just absolutely phenomenal. We all need to hang on that and just go yay.
Slightly, the state looks at it as maintained, so we're yellow. And then our grad rate, another kind of point of pride on the dashboard for us. And this does include our DAS schools, so Fairview is included there as well on a different calculation, but it's rolled in there, so we maintain that as well at a high level. Okay. Our suspension rate went down just slightly. This was something that we kept an eye on a lot last year. At the beginning of the year, we were looking like we were going to be pretty high, and we recovered fairly well going into the end of the year. Okay, so that's kind of the basic dashboard. I like it because it's all on one page. It's really easy to look at. At the top of the dashboard is how we look at our student groups. The easiest way to look at our student groups. I'm going to pull that up right now. Okay, so across the top in the blue is our student groups, and then down the side is the indicators. So when we look out across, we do get a color score for any of our student groups that have 30 or more students. For most of our data points, a couple of them are 15 for some subgroups, but for the most part, it's 30. As we move across, just some things to highlight as areas of success is that college and career indicator. As we go across, we see socioeconomically disadvantaged green, African American green, Asian, and on and on. Okay. Also, our graduation rate, when we look across, we see Asians at blue. So those are kind of some areas of, positivity within this. Another thing I want to point out is our performance of our students with disabilities. You do see some red here for the academic indicators, but when we look up above, this is a subgroup that we were kind of worried about last year, and a lot of effort. I know Diane's team put a lot of effort into addressing a wide variety of areas to make those students' experience better. So that blue for students with disabilities is in
Tim?
suspension rate.
On the students with disabilities, we can't see the category down the left-hand side. So
Right.
can you go to the students with disabilities column and then just read what those
Sure.
are? The top one is what?
Chronic absenteeism,
Okay,
suspension rate,
okay,
graduation rate,
good.
college and career,
Uh-huh.
and our two academics, English and math.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, areas of growth for us, and this is related to state level accountability. What the state looks for is any student group that scores red in two different priority areas. So the simplest way to explain that is that English and language arts count as one priority area. So look at those two together. Okay, so if a student group, like if you look at foster youth here, they're orange and red. So they would be considered red for the academic indicator. So that's one red in the eyes of state accountability. Each of the other indicators is essentially its own priority. Okay, so if a student group scores a red in two different priorities, the district, not any sites, falls under differentiated assistance, which is a county administered program that was new last year. We have fallen into differentiated assistance for our foster youth and homeless subgroups. And you can see foster youth, our suspension rate was red, and our academic indicator was red. For our homeless subgroup, chronic absenteeism and suspension rate, as well as the academic indicators were red. So we met with the county for the first time today to go over what differentiated assistance will look like. We begin our meetings in February with the county, and that will likely be a longer process looking at root causes of this performance. And to be completely honest, I think it will be a good exercise for us, and not just for these two subgroups, but it's kind of getting into just helping us improve in general.
I know this is last year's kids, but our homeless are, by every indication that we're gonna be very much impacted going up by the campfire experience, and very little of any kind of housing that I've heard being made available. So this appears to be wouldn't see it improving, I see it expanding, and so it seems like it's an area that we need a lot of help, but I don't know if it's gonna come in a functional way. I mean, I don't know if housing is gonna be available for
Right.
very many families at all, much less kids who
Well-
are classified as homeless.
And just to clarify beyond that is if a student was displaced out of their house, even if they bought a house the next day, they're still considered homeless for the year.
Oh, one day?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't either.
Thank you, Tim. On the issue of homelessness, I am aware that in some of the grant monies that are coming down from the state, they are setting aside money specifically for student housing for the younger population. So the state is aware of the significant impact on education and all of the things connected with homelessness. So when you're talking with Butte County Office of Ed, I know some of the dollars are going through their programs into the COC and back again. So there might be a way for us to link up to some of those grant dollars to help support through our targeted case managers and some of the other services that are going to be made available for some of the money is designated for assistance with first and last month rent, keeping the utilities on, and those types of assistances that have not been available through the schools before that may become available. I believe the RFQ, the first money is, I think, coming in March. So just be aware to ask questions about our being able to dip into that.
Yeah,
stream of
absolutely. We have a
money.
team that's always listening and following up on those types of things. Just to, let's see, I forgot where I was. So we met with the county. We kind of look forward to working with them on this, as well as other districts. But just to give you a little bit of context, the 3 subgroups across the state that districts fell into differentiated assistance most for were number 1, students with disabilities, with I think over 240 districts falling into differentiated assistance. Through that subgroup, we did not. Okay, the next 2 were foster youth and homeless, with well over 100 districts across the state falling in to differentiated assistance for those. Just to give you a little context. Okay. So differentiated assistance is a state accountability, like I said, administered by the county, with ESSA and the federal regulations that have come down. We're starting to see those creep back into our accountability system in the state. And that's currently, I'm going to kind of talk you through what those look like right now. So
The motion is approved unanimously. Yay. Good.
Thank you guys
Thank
for
you.
coming.
All righty, so on to next item, and this is 10.2.2. It's our 2017-18 Independent Financial Audit. Ms. Kruger.
Good evening. So before you all should have hard copies of our external financial audit. Believe it or not, it's for 17-18, which seems like eons ago, as we're starting to gear up for the 19-20 year. So just a reminder, we do have an external firm who comes in and audits not only our financial documents, but I want to remind the board that they do check all the compliance pieces related to all of our state and federal programs. So whether that's sending out proper letters or doing internal documents, making sure we have proper documentation, things match, that kind of thing. So it's not just the numbers, it is the compliance piece too. So I'm gonna start with the good news. The good news is we had no financial audit findings. So which is great. The unaudited financial statements that we provided you in October, those stand. So that's what's in here. So that then rolled over into the information that we provided at first interim. So we did have 2 state compliance findings. So the first one dealt with our before school program related to attendance. So we actually underreported 10 days, which is okay in the sense that there was no financial piece because we get a grant for our before and after school program. We did amend last week with CDE to reinstate those 10 days just so our records are complete related to our audit. The challenge becomes this is a pretty frequent audit finding for not only Chico Unified but other districts. So in our after school program, we have certain kids who are registered and therefore they all have ID cards that they can swipe, and so we have an automated attendance system. Our before school program is opened at those particular sites for all students. So those students who show up, they actually sign a paper login, and we have clerical staff who then go through the paper logins, and that's where the 10 days were underreported. We've brainstormed many, many times on how to get some sort of automated system in the before school program. We're still struggling with that a little bit, but we're constantly looking for new ways to do that. So I just wanted to prepare you on that. The second finding...
Do kids have an option of an ID thing for their school that a reader, electronic reader like...
Match.
So are you talking about what's on page 76?
76, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the 2 findings I just talked about are page 75 and 76 in your blue book here.
Okay. And then, so what about, I know they made it really clear that they're not responsible for our student funds, but we're responsible. So Fairview, what was going on there?
So on page 77, this is a summary of a prior year audit finding.
Oh.
So we had this student body audit finding last year. And so the very, very, very bottom, it says current status, fully implemented.
Okay.
So that means they double checked it this year. The procedures that we implemented, they agreed with and fulfilled the requirement. So this
Okay.
is no longer ongoing. So
And is that the same thing then for the unduplicated student
yes,
counts?
that is
and-
correct.
Okay, so.
Yeah, at the very top, it says prior audit findings. Yeah,
Yeah,
those
okay.
2 there.
Okay, good.
So the good news is that we're not having audit findings 2 years in a row.
Yes.
That if they do come up, which they will, we try not to, but they do come up at times, that we address them and we implement procedures so they don't come back a second year in a row.
Okay.
So I just ask that you approve the audit tonight unless you have any other questions.
Good. Any questions or comments? May I get a motion?
Yeah. I move that we approve item 10.2.2, the audit.
Second.
Okay. Looks like we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved unanimously.
I'd just like to communicate to the board that our independent auditors continually are very complimentary of Jacqueline and her
Absolutely.
team.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And how prepared they are and how easy the work is, which actually reflects in the cost, because we don't have additional costs related to what was proposed by the auditor. So again, it's really, really good work.
Yes. Thank you, Jack.
Yay.
Righty. So we are now moving on to 10.2.3. It's a discussion action item for charter schools Measure K project requests. Ms. Kissel.
Good evening, thank you. This should be really quick. Our Measure K Charter Facility Committee has been hard at work again. They're only bringing one request forward this month. And as you know, in the past, you had approved architectural planning and development of plans for the Chico Country Day School. As part of that future construction project that is now under design, they need to relocate some portables within their campus. So they needed to ask for $3,000, an allocation of $3,000 of Measure K funds for their DSA architect plan filing fees, so they can be reviewed and approved and that project can move forward. So $3,000 for Chico Country Day School for the division of the state architect.
Thank you. I move approval of 10.2.3 from the Charter Schools Measure K project request.
Second.
All righty, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from the board? Discussion from the audience? All righty, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. So Ms. Kissel will just move on to 10.2.4.
Thank you. Within 180 days after the last day of each fiscal year, the district needs to bring forward a report of our developer fee expenditures for the year, which you have been provided. And I'm here to answer any questions that you might have about this report or any expenses. Otherwise, I would ask that you approve this accounting report. Yes.
So it's not actually on this, but I'm just trying to look ahead. There, and I talked to Kevin about this, there was a projection by the county that we could be hurt by as much as $4 million on this odd thing they do with taxes where they're anticipating, of course, that the Magalia Paradise area won't have any ability to pay, and the largest land, which is us, 588 square miles, that we would pay the quote-unquote missing taxes. So as a question, and you can come back with the tax thing, are we anticipating that for this next year, our developer fees would go up a lot because of frantic building, or we might also suffer in the context of, you know, the congestion over where people can build and how they can build? I saw one estimate that the price per square foot in Paradise would go from 175 with land to 350 without land. I mean, you know, big, big jumps. So I know that's not a simple, but you two are the best that I know to answer it.
Well, I think that's two separate topics. First of all, the property tax topic would affect our bond measure, right, and our ability for future bond sales. I will talk to you about the developer fee portion, and then Kevin can follow up on the more complex portion. We do anticipate that developer fees will increase next year. A lot of our local developers have opened up properties for sale that they didn't anticipate putting up for sale prior to the fire because the demand is so high. So yes, I do feel that it will increase next year.
As far as the property tax question, what has happened is that the assessor has reassessed property value across Butte County and basically by law has to distribute those across all taxing entities. We are the largest in Butte County. So yes, we receive less property tax revenue, but as a reminder, that is offset with state aid. So similar to the old revenue limits, the local control funding formula says you should get this much money, and then it says, here's your local property taxes, and then we fill in the difference. So property taxes go up, the state pays less. The property taxes go down, the state pays more. So in our case, frankly, we may actually be a little better on cash flow because we've already projected that and actually already started the state dollars rolling already through the February recertification, and then they'll recertify again in June. So it won't make any difference to us. I know it was reported $4 million loss. That will not be a net loss to us. Ultimately, those will be additional dollars that the state will pay.
Very good. Are there any other questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the audience? May I get a motion for this?
Move the adoption of resolution 1449-19.
Second.
All righty, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All righty, moving on to 10.2.5, Mr. Bultema.
So we have been living in a world with one-time discretionary dollars have been passed out as we've gone through the fiscal year. Governor Brown, being fiscally prudent, would hand out one-time dollars. No, that is also true in the current budget, 2018-19. As a reminder, we were expecting as much in over $4 million before the budget was ultimately adopted. But what the governor did at that point in time is he increased the cost of living adjustment, the COLA, from roughly a 2.5 to over 3.7 or 3.07, but then reduced our one-time money. So we're receiving about an estimate of $2.4 million of one-time money. Based on the first interim budget that we presented to you before, and the deficit spending that we see in that program, our recommendation is that a majority of the dollars be placed in reserves and assigned as additional board reserve. That will cover some of the deficit in the current year 18-19, so we'll have to be sure in our presentation to you that we specifically pull that out so you see the underlying operating deficit that will be in existence. We think this will help us weather the storm. If those dollars are still available in future years, we can have another conversation with the board about how those dollars might be met. But I go back to our priorities from a financial perspective. It's always deficit spending. We need to eliminate that first. It's very inviting. The reality is you will still notice we have parking challenges there. We think maybe reducing or taking out some of the fencing so you don't have an enclosed space that's maybe so inviting may be also a deterrent. So along with signage, and we think some changes there, we are going to have to bring back to the board at some point additional parking at the district office. It's getting worse, not better, quite frankly, along with a lot of the trainings that we're doing. So I'm not going to do that to Julie this summer, quite frankly, but that recommendation is going to be coming in the future.
Yes, thank you. Kevin, these signs are uniform throughout the district. All the schools will have a sign that says what you just showed us, right?
Correct, in multiple locations.
Right. The question I have is about signage that is unique at individual schools. I'm most familiar with Pleasant Valley, and so that's the one I'm going to talk about. When you come up to the school site, you've checked in, signed the book, and then you go out to find the buildings. Finding D building and C building and M, and when you start, does M1 go here and M6 over there? It is terrible. And my question is, who's responsible for making school site signage usable?
So I think there's some things that we can do from the district level on that. If you look at some of our new construction projects and modernizations, I think you'll see better signage than we've seen in the past. But that's something we could work on, which I think is why we've asked for more than just what the cost of these signs are. It would make sense to have a small diagram of the school site with those pieces up near the front entrance piece, because we'll talk about this at our next board meeting, we will have single points of entry at all of our school sites, so having that type of signage would make a lot of sense. And if you approve this tonight, we would have the dollars to do that.
All right, are there any other questions or comments from the board?
Okay, I move approval of item 10.2.5.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments from the audience? All righty, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Unanimous. Okay, we are at 10.3.1. Mr. Hanlon.
Okay, so as you know, I occasionally bring you resolutions to eliminate positions. This first one, both positions are not, there's no one in there, so we're not laying anyone off. We've had communications with the union on the elimination of these positions. So we're bringing them to you for elimination as we do typically from board to board meeting.
Questions or comments?
Questions about that one?
All righty. Questions or comments from the audience? May I have a motion?
I move approval of item 10.3.1. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved. Mr. Hanlon,
So on the-
10.3.2.
Yeah, the second one is similar. I can't answer why they weren't all put onto one, probably because these came on along maybe a little later. But the only difference is on the first one, as somebody asked in one of the questions, elementary guidance specialist, that's just a reduction of 1 hour per day because of loss of site funds. But other than that, the others are a reduction of the position. So with the exception of the first one, the elementary guidance specialist, which obviously somebody had that position, that was just reduced from from 5 to 4 hours. The others are elimination, and there was nobody in those positions.
Very good. Questions or comments from the board?
I move approval of item 10.3.2.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the audience? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved. All right, so we have now moved down to 10.4.1. And I believe it was Ms. Griffin had asked at our last board meeting to have a time and a place to discuss some of the things that we learned at our annual Charter School Boards Association. And so I would like to go ahead and give the floor to her first.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to ask, who else was planning to talk? Okay.
I was going to talk about the ACE training. We covered a lot of that earlier, so I think we'll let it go this time around.
Okay. And just so we don't, none of us, I think, attended the same ones, so this would be all. Yeah,
I think
we had things spread out. So why don't we start with Eileen?
Sure. Thank you. And thank you, Liz, for putting this back in front of us to make sure we remembered to do this and share, because it is a valuable part of the thing. The one that I have to report on was the school violence and how to work to prevent, how to work through getting through it emotionally, and all of the things surrounding school disasters of any sort. But one of the things that I would like to mention, realizing that our February workshop is on this topic, and what I would like to do is recommend that our two liaisons, and I believe Linda and who's our other liaison for the February? Kathy? That I'm going to give you the complete packet of their information that they handed out for you to use to work with the presentation. But one of the things I wanted to really highlight is that the group was comprised of representatives from a number of school districts, and had a significant part of their presentation was to be from Rick Fitzpatrick, who is the Corning Unified Elementary School District Superintendent, Tehama. And so it was one of his schools that was hit with the gun incident. And because of the campfire, he was not able to attend the presentation. He was trying to get kids from Paradise settled in Corning. But some of the things that they pointed out that were unique to Mr. Fitzpatrick's district and procedures at that school that saved lives that morning was that the campus perimeter is locked down with fences. Once the children go into a classroom, the door is locked, which is not a usual thing, but in this case, the gentleman rammed the gate with his truck, so he was into the campus within seconds, really, and immediately trying to open classroom doors. So there wasn't time between when he came onto the campus for the code red to be sounded and getting the classrooms locked and things. So they believed that having those classrooms locked kept him from entering any classroom. And in frustration, in the videos that they have, he left after he was unsuccessful in getting a classroom door to unlock. There's pros and cons with having a door locked, but it was one of the things that they did want to talk about there at that presentation. The other thing that was significant, I thought, was the very strong indication from the school sites and the personnel is that anybody can call a code red. There is no designated person. If somebody, a school site person, feels that there is an immediate danger and they need to call a code red, they have that ability, because so often the school office person, rather than a principal or is the person that becomes aware, or a custodian, or anyone. And so that was something that I wanted to highlight to you, to kind of talk about, to possibly fold into the presentation next week. And I'll stop there, other than to, after listening to the presentation in the absence of Mr. Fitzpatrick, I would just recommend that we talk to our representatives and maybe invite him to be part of our presentation, because it seems as though as they had not only a good before the disaster happened response, but what they did afterwards was very thorough and well thought out. And so that's my recommendation, is to consider that. And I'll hand that to you, Kathy.
Okay, so I'll skip fast. I already brought up the next gen. The political landscape, that one was quite interesting on the distinction between Brown and Newsom. The framework of, and there were several editorials in the last 2 days, because Brown put up his spending and things of the issue of it sounds like he may be a little bit more careful than they thought, but what they said was they felt like there would be a clear move on Newsom's part to have a better structured charter school oversight. So there was a great concern about the failure to have accurate accounting for charter schools. So they thought that would be number one. Preschool, he's already brought that up, so they talked about that as funding. I thought their concern was very significant, but what they said was, to them, the real issue is there were all these newly elected legislators who would all want to have a sucker to show people back home, and their concern was, would he be able to stop that sort of flood of requests? And with the issue about more money for schools, because he's already made that clear as a budget thing, would it be real more money or just smaller slices of pie? And they said that will be the real test. He's promising more, but, and we know preschools are highly effective, but they're very expensive. I pay for one every month, so yes. The LA teachers strike, I don't think anybody knows yet how that's going to roll out. The housing crisis, Newsom also mentioned that and is already saying, this is not in my backyard, isn't going to work, and, I don't think we're going to be quite in the same line of sight as more urban areas, because everything I've seen has been about housing near transit points, and we don't have any transit points. I thought one of the most significant things was the failure of the state to release the bonds that had already been approved. When we went a year ago, there were smaller school districts that had already, and Julie's already left, had already encumbered their money thinking they were going to get matching funds. tremendous choke on how they were going to pay for what they had already signed up for and what they were going to be able to build. So we seem to be going that way. They said we should love our union rep if it was going well. That's really difficult. Kevin's my neighbor, but okay. That was their advice. I already mentioned the coding. A great deal of concern about high school sports and safety, concussions and heat stroke. We've had deaths already, and if you read the article that was in the sports section about the really significant impacts, and a number of now brain diseases being linked to that. Special ed, she's already left. They say there's a dramatic increase in legal suits. Yep. Dramatic. And what I found very interesting, they said that 504s are more powerful than IEPs because they last longer. And they said when they get put together, their point was that an IEP, you're providing educational assistance. A 504, you're supposed to be making sure that child has the same access to activities as other kids. And I don't think we're doing that. And they did recognize that many schools are not informing their parents of their rights. And so they're lawyers. I mean, that was their thing. They are lawyers, and they are getting these cases. And they said the changes in the law have really expanded the time framework. Somebody can go back to when their kid first got sick and say, aha, at this point, even though I didn't know what it was, I'm going back to that, and you're responsible to the point that where we are now. So I thought that was really key. I already talked about the CTE. There was a gender about women in industry and leadership. I thought, sex trafficking, which I didn't go to because I already have it, but our own lawyer is very worried about marijuana attitudes versus legality. And he was really clear that we should make sure that any drug issues that we have about an employee is based on performance and not attitude. So I thought that was interesting. So I'll turn it over.
Next. I went to several very interesting workshops there, but the one that was standing room only and quite lively was in regards to Prop 64, which made the recreational use of marijuana legal.
Good.
And
I was nervous.
let me tell you, it was lively. And we as a board already talked about policy and what that looks like for students being administered, and we haven't come back around to that. And really that's where everyone is at this point in time until the state gives some direction. But there's a lot of different things going on. Because Prop 64, it actually changed the health and safety codes. And I have this whole list of codes that it's changed, 21 and older, 18 and older. So there's a lot of detail involved in this. But, one of the sections of this that really has people going, or schools kind of up in the air, is, use is recommended by a physician, and there is, again, no real clarity on what is a physician. Is it a chiropractor? Is it a medical doctor? Is it a nurse practitioner? So there's discussion on that. There was also quite a bit of discussion about employees, and again, that's a whole separate policy that should line up with your alcohol and drug policies as well. There was a Senate Bill 1127 that came before Governor Brown, and he vetoed it. It would have amended Ed Code to allow parents to administer cannabis products at school. The other part of this discussion was CBDs.
The medical one.
Right, medical versus THC-based. And so, again, there needs to be some direction and clarity from the state. But really, it ended up with, there's been lawsuits. There was already quite a big lawsuit. It's called the Rincon case. And it was about a kindergarten student who went to a private preschool and has a seizure disorder. and she was using CBD oil, THC-based. When she went into kindergarten, the case turned into a discussion about a free and appropriate education because the child had an IEP.
And a 504 should have,
Yes,
yeah.
and it was ugly. The way it's standing right now is that it was revealed that due process was not followed. She was not placed in the least restrictive environment, and so that's still pending. There's just a lot more to come.
Yeah.
And, just a heads up to the board that we're going to see this again. And we'll wait for administration to keep us posted on what's coming down the pipe. But it was a very lively discussion. So with that, I'll turn it over.
Okay. Well, there were actually two that I went to that I want to talk about. The first really pertains to our role as being the ones who set the tone in the district and set the direction of the district, which is one of our main jobs. And that's one of the ones that we hardly ever get a chance to talk about. And one of the things I attended was a workshop that had to do with the computer science and computer science. Now, we all know that they came up with, finally, a curriculum that was passed this past year in 2018. However, it's not mandatory. It's not required. And so, everybody seems to recognize that we want to have more computer science in the school, but how do we go about doing that? One of the main issues is that, we have all these requirements already for graduation. So if you were to mandate that, what would you get rid of? What would you have to put in it, take something out in order to make this happen? And one of the ideas that was being discussed was, instead of having the requirement of a lab science, that you take away that requirement to have a lab science and replace that computer science could be considered one of the sciences. The other thing was that very, very few schools right now have offered the computer science and have like a series of classes throughout. Very, very few districts have that. Maybe in the Bay Area they have some, and Silicon Valley, but it's not widespread throughout California. And so they provided, this is the Computer Science for California. There's an organization that is really promoting taking a more systematic approach to getting the computer science curriculum into the classrooms. And they have this whole series of, it's a rubric for figuring out where you are in the process and how from being a novice to being highly developed in your district from kindergarten through graduation and high school. And so I connected with a woman who is at UCLA, and they have a pilot program that they're trying to get other schools to participate in. And I asked her to contact us, to contact our district, because it sounded from what they were looking for that we would be a really good match for that, which would help us put into place whatever is necessary to investigate getting the computer science back into the curriculum and how that is done. So that was really exciting. And it's got to be up to us, because we're the ones who actually decide what becomes part of the curriculum, just like in the same way that we decided a year or two ago that we were wanting to have the classes in financial education for the kids in high school so they could learn really about personal finance as part of economics. This kind of has the same type of thing, except, we need to realize that understanding computer science is very important to the life and the future for any person who is existing on this planet. So, having that be part of it. So anyhow, that was great. The other one had to do with this really wonderful program that they have in several locations down in Southern California. It's called Team Kids, and it's something that gets kids connected and their parents and the whole school to community resources, to the police, to government officials. And it's a month-long program where it's actually run by the kids, and they end up doing a service type of project and coming up with funds. So the kids are all coming up with how planning these activities, planning like a carnival to raise funds. They determine who they want the funds to go to, some sort of worthy cause. And it's something that's kind of ideal for, getting all the kids on board and getting their sensibilities, connecting to the police, forming really good relationships in communities where the police might be looked on as, not being your friend, and those type of things. So, a couple of really good, inspiring type of workshops to have attended, and strangely enough, attended one also on this differential assistance. And I had never heard of that before, and tying in exactly to what Tim was talking about and what you have to, where you are in order to qualify for differential assistance, and what the county is supposed to be doing for you to help you with that. So anyhow, got those questions answered. So I thought it was a really worthwhile conference. I think going to those, after you've gone to several of them, it's hard to not replicate things. But if you keep, seeking new and unique type of things that, you are interested in, so you can feed your own desires to learn more and get motivated and get inspired, I think that really does serve its purpose. It's really like the one thing that does us for us, other than like going to graduations. So anyhow, thank you everybody for agreeing to do this, because we go to this and then we really don't have the opportunity to talk, and I know it's been a while since we even went, but I appreciate hearing. Was there anything else you wanted to say, Tom?
Earlier on, the experience of students. After that, such an inspiring and nice wrap-up, I hate to bring it back down, but I was shocked by some of the statistics. 13 out of 30 students in a classroom, on average, will experience stress from at least 3 adverse childhood events, and 3 is the magic number that shows a significant and measurable lessening of chances of acting positive about. Yeah. And they range from, simple things like depression all the way to domestic violence and incarcerated. But if you've got 3 of those, they're not mitigated. There's really intense chance that you won't get where you're going. And given both our Butte County's demographics in general and the fact that we're going through a series of crises, not even just campfire, but the housing crisis in general here, it seemed like a really important time to make that focus any future thoughts we have. Changing our curriculum or our stance, making sure there really is a high investment in training, what we can do for those students.
Well, I know from what we've spoken of before too, and right when First Five was one of the first organizations that became trauma-informed and organized the rest of the county to participate in instruction about that, and they actually funded a lot of that. So it's now coming to fruition because it's all being permeated in the schools and with trainings, and we've heard from them that they're doing that. And I think it's absolutely right because, Butte County has, through work, and anybody who's had contact with the social services and, child protective services or whatever, we all know that how so many of our students are affected by those. And if you read our reports that we get for expulsions, that's where you see it. You see, parents that are incarcerated. You see grandparents raising grandchildren that because the parents are addicted. You see all types of things like that, domestic violence. And so our paying attention to it, our kids, we have to meet them where they are. And I think that does help us to realize that's what we have to be doing. But yeah, thank you for all that. And yeah,
I want to end on just a really kick-ass note. I was at the one where they had very young, she's college, community leader, female, who had organized the students across the bay, so 2 different cities, Oakland and San Francisco. And she had just done a phenomenal amount to get these high school kids to perceive that they could help each other, that they could connect to their communities, and really do a major leadership role. And it was over the kids, the females largely, reporting that they were being bullied. And it was different between the communities and the schools, but her leadership and her community outreach, and they have an organization, and you know, we've had some very striking young female students and college leaders, and I thought that was a really positive aspect where instead of us telling them how to fix things, they were coming up with their own solutions. Even some parents who are surprised that their daughters are school leaders, yeah, thank you. You know, there's leadership there to draw upon that, and in the community that we could really help encourage. Let them do it, but encourage them to make those links with each other. They know their friends. They have outreaches. So it was just that was very positive.
Keeping that information about where we can go to look for those models, that's a good thing to share. So we can keep on hand so we know to look. This is a great program. Hey, let's find out what happened at
Yeah,
school that
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Just, excuse me, just to follow up, Kathy, on what you said, I think we saw evidence in that type of growth for women in this last election, both locally and nationally. And when you talk to some of the past leaders in Butte County politics and things, those women came into their involvement after they'd had children. Most of them, like Mary Flynn and some of the others that have been on city councils in the past, compared to this year where we had a 27-year-old college student elected, you know, to the city council, two new women on the board of supervisors, and they have been involved at a much younger age. And so getting, I know that our government teachers at both school sites do try to get their students involved with attending local government meetings and things, and it really highlights just how strong the leadership gene is in an untapped reservoir of
Role models, yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Anyone else? All righty, well, thank you for that. Let's move on to item 11, items from the floor. Are there any items from the floor? Number 12, are there any announcements? Eileen?
Thank you. I would just like to announce that, a reminder that Empty Bowls is coming up. That is the annual fundraiser that CUTA, in conjunction with the Chico Unified School District and the teachers in our art departments, the students make bowls and paint them or whatever. And it's March 7th at Lincoln Hall on the Chico Senior High School campus. And I believe there are 2 dinners. So I think the first one starts at 5 and 6:30. Thank you, Kevin. And all of the proceeds go to the Taurus Community Shelter, which of course supports our homeless families and in the community. So as we know, supporting our community and those folks that are having trouble finding housing are the way toward getting those reds off of our foster youth and homeless youth's reports. Thank you to both of those groups. I know it's a lot of work. Thank you.
Oh, yes, Mr. Moretti.
It went out as an email today, but it's right before the board workshop.
Sunday, February 24th is, there's a Read Across America happens across the United States. Celebrate Dr. Seuss. Here in Chico, we do Read Across Chico, and it's a combination of the Chico teachers and the BCOE teachers. So it's at the Card Center, Sunday, February 24th from 11 to 1. Give away books, teachers do readings, and there's face paintings and all kinds of stuff. And so everything's free to the community, and everyone's invited. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you.
It's, I think it's, I don't know, I have to be there at 10, but I think it's officially there at 11, I think. It goes 11 to 1 at the Card Center.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that. You're welcome. Any others?
So I just want to give a kudos to our maintenance and operations team. As you can hear, it is quite a storm going on out there. And even as we've been sitting here, we're getting updates from them, pictures of limbs, trees, things that are going down. So to be out in this, to be working, kudos to them for making sure our schools are ready for our kids tomorrow.
Great. All right, with that said, yes, I was just going to say that I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you for attending, but please do be safe driving home. Thank you.